The federal government has developed a new weapon against hackers like LulzSec. It is a list of the top 25 software programming errors and what companies can do to prevent those mistakes. The effort will be unveiled today by the Department of Homeland Security. The New York Times says the program has been in the works for 3 years. But no matter how robust the software is, stupidity remains the greatest threat to computer systems. That is the unavoidable conclusion from a separate study by the Department of Homeland Security. And here to tell us about it is Michael Riley. Michael covers cybersecurity for Bloomberg in Washington. So, Michael, what exactly did the Department of Homeland Security do to come to this perhaps not so surprising conclusion?
Well, they took the fact that hackers have sometimes used malware implanted on USB sticks and CD-ROMs, dropped them around offices, people plug them in, and they download really malicious software onto their own network. So they wanted to test that theory and see actually how vulnerable people were. They took some government agencies, some companies who volunteered. They dropped USB sticks and CD-ROM or CDs into parking lots. And it turns out that of the people who picked them up, 60% of them went into their offices, went into their sort of computer networks that are secure, and plugged them in out of curiosity. They wanted to see what was on it. If the logo of the company or the agency was actually on them, that rate went up to 90%.
So, Michael, what is the takeaway here ultimately? Even as the Department of Homeland Security recommends these fixes for programming errors that are quite common, there's effectively nothing that can be done to stop dumb people from plugging a USB drive into their corporate computer?
Well, even more than that, one of the things that's really changed the game in favor of hackers is that human beings are really the weakness now. You can spend the main way into secure networks is to get workers or employees to infect their own networks. One of the ways they do it is with USB sticks. Another way they do it is with emails, which are targeted to employees. Even very sophisticated companies like RSA, which is a security company, employees are vulnerable to this. The RSA network was breached because an employee picked out an email from a junk mail folder. In other words, it had been filtered out. It looked like it was legitimate. It looked like it was a hiring email. They pulled it out. They clicked on a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet downloaded malware onto the network.
Now, it's not just corporate computer networks that are at risk here. If I recall correctly, it's believed that USB drives were instrumental in infecting Iran's computers with the Stuxnet virus. Isn't that right?
That's right. That's one sort of main theory about how they got it onto the network. A lot of very, very secure networks aren't hooked up to the internet for exactly this reason. So the only way you can get onto them is to get a device plugged into the network. That was one way they did it. The idea is that, yes, they dropped USB sticks and somebody picked one up and plugged it into a very, very secure network.
Now, Michael, I want to ask you a quick question about LulzSec because you've been covering the spate of hacking attacks they've claimed responsibility for. Now that they say they're going away, will that in any way reduce the frequency of some of the attacks that we've been covering?
Not really. It'll reduce the publicity around them. LulzSec was famous because it was hacking sites and companies and some pretty high-profile targets, but then it would publicize them and put it up on its website and do all sorts of things. The real danger is, in fact, very sophisticated crime groups located in Eastern Europe or Russia, very sophisticated hacking groups in China. Those guys aren't interested in publicity. Those hacks are going to go on.
All right, and perhaps even more dangerously, given that they're after something else besides publicity. Michael, thanks very much. Michael Riley, he covers cybersecurity in Washington for Bloomberg.